Hey, how's it going there, everyone? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, another lengthy discussion vlog. There's not going to be a ton of editing for this one, but welcome. Glad you guys could join me, DeBoss, Ryan, whatever you call me here on the channel. But it's going to be back here doing another video with you guys. And for today, guys, I wanted to do another discussion video, but one a little bit differently than the ones I've done previously. The past two vlogs that I did like this were talking about my first ever YouTuber meetup with my friend Patrick Barrett here on the platform, and then the second video that I did was talking about my favorite video game of all time, Final Fantasy VII, and how it impacted and in some ways changed my life for a bit of an inspirational experience. But this time around, I actually want to talk about one of the more notable personalities and definitely people who has influenced my content creation journey, and someone who has become an extremely good friend of mine here on the platform. And that would be my buddy Emilio from the Smelly Cheese YouTube channel. Shout out to you, buddy, if you end up watching this. The reason I'm doing a video talking about Emilio and our relationship over the years and a lot of things that we've done online together is because Emilio has been one of the more notable personalities that I've met here on YouTube, and I've done a ton of things with, and it's gotten pretty creative over the years. I may do other vlogs like this talking about notable people who have impacted my content creation journey, kind of chronicling some of our history together and some of like collaborations, that kind of thing. But Emilio, I figured, would be the perfect contender for a discussion like this, because Emilio and I have known each other for years, and he's become an extremely good friend. I gotta say, I know a lot of things about Emilio now that I probably wouldn't have known. He's the biggest Pittsburgh Steelers fan I know. His favorite TV show of all time, I think, is that show Riverdale off of the CW. He loves that TV show. He actually, when we did a podcast together, there was an episode where we ranked our favorite TV shows. He wouldn't stop talking about how much he loved the series, so shout out to you on that one there, buddy. But yeah, in all seriousness, though, Emilio and we met many years ago. When I say many years ago, I believe it was like 2017, I believe, is when we met. Late 2016, early 2017. I'm fairly certain it was 2017. We met actually through a Facebook post that I posted in one of the small YouTuber Facebook communities that are present there on Facebook, where you can share videos and connect with other creators. I posted in a number of groups many years ago when I was first starting to get like seriously into YouTube, and I was looking to do a podcast series on my YouTube channel. And no one else really responded to any of my posts except for this random kid. Well, I say kid, but Emilio was like a teenager at the time. And this is how I first connected with him. He wanted to come on the podcast. He said he'd do it. And we ended up linking up that way. Through that Facebook post, we ended up recording a podcast here on my channel where I basically introduced Emilio, and we got to talking and whatnot here and there. And I didn't really know Emilio very well at that point. It was one of the first, I would say, serious collaborations that I did. And admittedly, the podcast episode that I made wasn't very good at all. It was recorded on a black background. There was no editing, no professional audio setup. To be honest, it wasn't a very good setup whatsoever. But I still enjoyed doing the podcast. I don't think it's aged particularly well, but it was the stepping stone into meeting Emilio. That was our first ever collaboration. We met over a Facebook post for a podcast that I did on my channel, which again turned out to not be a very good video. I would say in the long run hasn't aged very well, but I don't regret doing that video because it allowed me to meet one of my good friends here on the platform, and someone who I have done a ton of stuff with. Emilio and I still kept in contact after we did that initial collaboration with each other. We did a number of collaborations on his channel and mine. I remember a lot of our early collaborations that we did, because we got to know each other fairly well over that time. We started talking more over Facebook. I found out a lot more about him. Like, he lives in Mexico. I live here in the United States. I found out a lot about each other's lives here and there, some of the content that we like to do, a lot of our ambitions, that kind of thing. And that branched off into us doing multiple collaborations over the next few years after we initially met. The first video I appeared on Emilio's channel, you guys can look it up now, because his channel is going to be in the description down below. It's a Wonder Woman leaked full movie, which was released back in 2017. I appear for a brief cameo, and Emilio appeared in a number of videos that I did on my channel, including a small YouTuber interview series that I used to do, where I've interviewed over 50 small creators here on the platform. Most of these people I'm not friends with per se, nor do I really know them very well, because most of them were people that I just met briefly over Facebook, and we did some collaborations together, and I interviewed them. And Emilio was one of them. He actually edited that video himself, because admittedly, my editing style for those interviews and the way I posed the questions, not the best way to do an interview. But it was something that worked well for the format at the time. But Emilio insisted on editing that video himself for his own style, and he still answered the same set of questions anyway. So that was another video that we did. I remember as we kept up communications over the, like I say, from 2017 to about 2019, in that range, it was mostly just us getting to know each other those first few years. And we did a number of collaborations, and Emilio and I, like I said, got to know each other better. And I'd say one of the biggest collaborations that we did, which I think was 2018 or 19, I can't remember which one, but Emilio did a documentary video on me. He was inspired, I think, from the Shane Dawson documentary videos that he was making on YouTube at that time. And Emilio got the idea and came to me. He's like, hey, listen, I have this really cool idea. Why don't I do a documentary with you? And he didn't tell me what the documentary was gonna be on. It was gonna be this big project where he was gonna form a cohesive storyline and report on me in some kind of story fashion. I recorded a few things with him actually for that video, and I had no clue what it really was. Granted, I did know the premise a little bit. I had this character named Ryan Bitnerovich, which was a Russian parody of my real name, and it was about me being this mysterious immigrant who had a very interesting background in history going missing, and Emilio trying to figure out what happened to me, which was the whole point of the video. So I recorded a few scenes with him for that video, I remember. And I remember when he released the video, he called it Declassified. And it was one of the best collaborations, not only that I have done with Emilio, I think, but I think it's one of the best small YouTuber collaborations that I've done, period, here on YouTube. It was extremely creative. I absolutely loved the storyline. His editing was on point. It was just fantastic. I loved doing that collaboration. So it was something that Emilio and I did extremely early on that really helped the dynamic as well. As we started adapting to each other's content, Emilio branched off into starting up something that would become one of the biggest things that I've been part of here on YouTube. Because Emilio and I, like I said, we've known each other. By this point, we've done a ton of videos together. And we've gotten to know each other pretty well in the community. But he started up this podcast he called the Trash Talk Podcast, which he has some inspirations from some other major creators as well at the time. And I was the first ever guest on the first ever episode of Trash Talk, and that was, I would say, the first professional podcast we did together. We met because of a crappy podcast I did on my channel, so I guess it was only fitting that for his podcast, I guess I would be the first person on there for that. But we had a fun time with that one. It wasn't anything too spectacular. If you look back on Emilio's channel, you can see like those extremely old Trash Talk episodes. And it was, I think, The Boss's New Merch, I think was the name of that one. We basically said like a half an hour conversation, roughly talking about my YouTube channel, some things about my life at the time, and I think the running gag of that one was me making my own merch line, which never happened, but it was a running gag on my channel at the time, so we just kind of incorporated that into the episode. When I look back on that episode that we did together, it was my first ever podcast experience, and I was extremely reluctant, I think, at the time to really talk about myself, because this was still within my first few years of doing YouTube seriously before the channel started to pick up serious traction. And it was in the middle of all that we did this episode, because I look back on it and I'm not proud of some of the dynamic that I had in a lot of older videos and certain collaborations as well, because I feel like I could have put a lot more emphasis into them. Because if you look back and watch that video, you can definitely tell I was a bit awkward at some points, and definitely reluctant to reveal really anything about myself, to not be as open. But I still think that it was a really good experience and a good entry point to doing collaborations like that, as we will discuss here. But Emilio and I, though, regardless, I think it's a solid video that we ended up doing. Emilio, he branched off into doing the Trash Talk Podcast, which became a large running project of his for most of Season 1. Because podcasts and, like, they're like TV shows and whatnot, they can be broken up into seasons. So Emilio did a bunch of different collaborations with a number of other creators that he had met in the community and people that he had talked with. And then eventually it got to the point, which I think was because it was a hard time for him to get consistent viewers well, not viewers, but people to do the podcast with. He approached me one day after, it's about 6, 7 episodes of that first season. He asked, "Hey, just curious, do you want to join on as the co-host of the Trash Talk podcast with me?" And I was completely blown away because I had never done anything like this before. Like, I've been making content very frequently there with the boss when the channel again started to pick up traction and all the other content that I branched off into doing. And Emilio, when he offered me that position, I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And thus it kicked off another dynamic and one of the main segues into the longest running project that I've done here on the internet, outside of my own YouTube channel and my second channel, The Nostalgia Factor, as well, and a brief time with my own podcast, the Trash Talk podcast. Emilio and I, we did it. We've had a lot of fun. Trash Talk for me is an extremely notable point for me, and I absolutely loved doing Trash Talk. Emilio and I, we had this dynamic there on the podcast. Some episodes we would invite people on. Other times as the podcast would progress, we learned to form a dynamic with one another. Because season 1, there were definitely, and Emilio mentions this in one of the season 4 episodes that we did. And there was definitely some awkward moments there at the beginning, because Emilio and I were still getting to know each other extremely well. And we didn't fully know how to talk certain points. We definitely had some debates and disagreements over like movie rankings and all this other stuff. But it brought us closer together as friends, I feel, too, because we learned more about each other in the process. And after the first 2 seasons and a disastrous time zone episode that we did, which isn't even up on Spotify or anything, it's just a lost episode on Emilio's channel. It's only about 12 minutes long, and it was a whole time zone fiasco with getting another guest on from another country. It was a whole mess. But that was really the only bad episode that we had made. Once season 3 picked up, which at this point I think is around 2020, at this point, when we started doing season 3 together, Emilio and I started getting into the groove of the podcast. We started talking about life experiences, political topics, movies. We started talking about modern day culture, topics that were relevant at the time, memes. Like, we did all sorts of different videos and whatnot, which were podcast episodes. They were converted to videos on the part of Emilio, who uploaded them on his second channel, Smelly Cheese B, where you can watch most of them. But season 3 and then 4 and then eventually 5, Emilio and I continued to pump out content consistently on Trash Talk, and I absolutely loved doing Trash Talk. Emilio and I, we had such a good dynamic doing that show, and it was amazing. Absolutely loved doing pretty much every single episode, because it was something that you wouldn't really see between 2 people. The fact that we ran a podcast together for about 5 years, or for 5 seasons roughly in that case, 4 to 5 years, we did that together, was an amazing project, and I am extremely proud to be part of that. And I thank Emilio for inviting me on in the first place, and for both of us just continuing to do it. And it was fantastic. We built up a massive viewership at many different points. It was very slow at first, and there were points where it did taper off. But we garnered an audience, like a lot of people. There was a point where the viewership and everything else was extremely high. And considering how this was a smaller podcast to begin with, we achieved something fantastic that I think very few people will legitimately accomplish in the YouTuber community. And we had a number of fantastic episodes together. And our dynamic where we would just mess around with each other and memes and all that other stuff. Because when I was on the podcast from a personal standpoint, admittedly, there were a lot of episodes where I just tried to be funny. Like, there were times where I was legitimate, that I talked about serious topics and all that. But admittedly, the dynamic on the podcast for my personality coming out on there is very different from how it is both for me as a person and on my YouTube channel. Because we were joking around constantly. Trash Talk wasn't just a show we were talking about hot topics or rankings or all that other stuff. We would mess around with each other a lot. We would crack a bunch of jokes at each other's expense and just try to be as funny as possible, which I think we nailed for the most part. But it's because of that personality coming out. It's not fully us on the podcast. Like, it's us, but the way that we try and come off as humorous, for example, isn't completely who we are personality wise. It's definitely one of like those character portrayal things in a way, but it was still something that was fantastic, and I absolutely loved doing Trash Talk. And Trash Talk, season 5 ended up tapering off about late last year. Season 5 was one of those things where we had multiple episodes, but Emilio got busy with his schedule. I got busy with mine, with my MAT program that I'm scheduled to graduate from very soon, actually, at this point. But Emilio, he got busy with a lot of stuff in his life, and, life continues on. And the podcast, I don't know how long it was going to last, but we ended up stopping season 5 before the year was over. And one thing I would love to do is to come out with a finale to Trash Talk, just kind of recapping the show and giving it a proper conclusion, which would be awesome. But even if that never happens, the fact that Emilio and I made that many episodes of Trash Talk and was arguably the biggest collaboration that we did together, and it was something amazing. Which leads me to present day. I didn't want to drag out like an hour-long video or anything like that talking about every single thing Emilio and I have done and all the aspects of our relationship and everything else, because it was kind of the build-up to this. Because Emilio is one of the best people that I know on YouTube. He makes fantastic content. He's extremely creative. He's passionate about filmmaking. He's someone who I know that not only speaks multiple languages and is extremely passionate about doing so, but he's seen different parts of the world that I may never see. And he's constantly involved in so many things. And Emilio is just a fantastic friend. And that was part of the inspiration that I wanted to make for this vlog, kind of chronicling some of our history together, some of the things that we've done together on YouTube, and kind of how he's impacted my content journey. Because he really has, especially through doing Trash Talk for this long. For that long anyway. It was a fantastic podcast to do, and as well as all our collaborations and all that other stuff. But Emilio influenced me for the better to be creative. He was someone who is definitely inspiring. I hope in some way maybe I had the same effect on him, maybe? I don't know. He'd be the one to confirm that one. Even if I wasn't, it's still fantastic to have known you this long, buddy, if you are watching this. You are a fantastic content creator, and it has been a pleasure to know you all these years. I hope to meet you someday, which would be amazing. After all, I have met Patrick, so who knows? I hope to meet a few other YouTube creators that I've gotten to know over the years, which would be fantastic. But hopefully I get to meet you someday, buddy. You make amazing content. You've impacted my journey for the better, and this video is dedicated to you in a lot of ways, because you are truly inspirational, and you are a fantastic person and a fantastic friend. And I wanted to convey that to everybody here because, again, Emilio is definitely one of the best small YouTubers that I know on YouTube. And his content is completely backed up in its quality. And Emilio as a person is also really good. So again, it's been a pleasure to know you all these years, buddy, and I hope to know you for several more. And yeah, that's basically it, just chronicling the journey of probably one of the most influential people that I have met in the community. So keep up the good work, pal. I'm sure I'll chat with you again soon. So, yeah. But otherwise, though, guys, that's it for this vlog. Basically just me rambling a bit about me and Emilio and our dynamic and a lot of other things about our relationship. Please go and check out Emilio in the description down below. He, once again, is a fantastic content creator and person, and you should definitely go and support him if you're interested in what he does. A lot of the videos that he makes nowadays are more scripted, longer, they're better editing. I think the most recent video, the full-length video that he came out with, was a review of the Percy Jackson book series. And he's also done the same thing with Diary of a Wimpy Kid and a number of other videos, including a lot of them where he reviews movies and he talks about a lot of very interesting parts of Spanish culture or Mexican culture. So there's a lot of really good videos to check out. And there's a series as well that I've been doing with Emilio as well that I also didn't mention. The Lost in Translation game show series that I've done with Emilio. I competed against Cole, aka Legion Entertainment. Shout out to you, dude, for the first 2 episodes. And the one that we did last year, I went off against my buddy Jesse, aka Nukapia Demon. Shout out to you, dude, as well. But you guys can check out those collaborations. So, and yeah, check out some of the other ones I've mentioned too. They're on Emilio's channel, and or mine, depending on which ones I've mentioned. So, but thank you guys for watching this video. Please check out Emilio in the description down below. I might make more vlogs like this chronicling some of my history and whatnot with some other notable people on the platform. But otherwise, guys, thank you so much for the support. Emilio, you're awesome, dude. Keep doing what you're doing. And yeah, check him out in the description. Until next time, guys, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everyone, and take care of yourselves. You all matter.